Guam Park pressed her face against the window of the transport shuttle, watching Kepler Prime Academy grow larger with each passing second. The massive space station orbited a neutron star, its metal surface gleaming like a jewel in the darkness. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years. Now, finally, she was here. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Giwan grabbed her bags and followed the other students into the arrival terminal. Around her, aliens of every shape and size moved through the crowds. There were tall, thin creatures with skin like glass, small, furry beings that bounced instead of walked, even some that floated in the air without touching the ground. Guan smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped for. A blue light scanned her at the entrance. A pleasant voice spoke from hidden speakers. Guan Park, human. Welcome to Kepler Prime Academy. Please proceed to Dormitory Wing 7, room 412. Giwan found her room after getting lost twice in the winding corridors. The door slid open to reveal a simple space with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a large window overlooking the stars. One bed was already occupied by a crystalline being who turned at the sound of the door. "Hello," the alien said, her voice like wind chimes. "I am Velmara. You must be my roommate." "Chuan," she replied, setting down her bags. "I'm from Earth." "What species are you?" "I am Nexian. Our people are known for peaceful meditation and conflict resolution." Velmara tilted her head, light refracting through her crystal body. "I've never met a human before. I look forward to learning about your culture." Over the next few days, Guan settled into academy life. She attended orientation sessions, explored the vast library, and made friends with students from a dozen different worlds. Everyone seemed curious about humans. Some asked about Earth's oceans. Others wanted to know about human music or art. No one seemed afraid of her. Guan felt welcomed. On the 4th day, class schedules arrived on everyone's personal tablets. Giwan scrolled through hers excitedly. Xenobiology, advanced chemistry, stellar cartography, galactic history. Perfect. But then she noticed something strange next to galactic history, were the words, "War Counselor Supervision Required." Juan frowned. She checked her other classes. None of them had this note. She looked at Velmara's schedule on the desk. No such requirement appeared on her roommate's history class. "What does this mean?" Juan asked, showing Velmara her tablet. Velmara's crystalline features shifted in what might have been confusion. "I do not know. Perhaps you should ask the administration office." Jiwon marched to the administration building, her confusion turning to irritation. At the front desk, she met Elder Sithra, a tall insectoid being with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. "Excuse me," Juan said. "My schedule says I need a war counselor for history class. The other students don't have this." "Is this a mistake?" Elder Sithra's many eyes focused on her. "No mistake. All human students require war counselor supervision during history courses. This is academy policy." "But why?" Jiwan asked. "What makes humans different?" "It is a safety protocol," the elder said simply. "For everyone's well-being." "Safety from what?" "I'm not dangerous." "This feels like discrimination." Elder Sithre folded her multiple arms. "The policy is not open for discussion. Your war counselor will meet you before your first history class. His name is Commander Minho Choi." Giwan left the office feeling frustrated and confused. Back in her room, she contacted her friend Junho Lim, another human student studying engineering. "Mia, I had the same thing," Junho said through the video call. "All the human students do. My counselor is some retired military officer. I don't get it either, but whatever. If that's what they want, fine." "It's not fine," Giwan said. "We came here to prove that humans belong in the galaxy. How can we do that if they treat us like we're dangerous?" The next morning, Giwan arrived early at her first history class. The room was circular, with seats arranged in tiers around a central holographic display. Students from various species were already seated, chatting quietly. A man stood near the back wall. He was tall for a human, with short dark hair showing streaks of gray. His face was weathered, and a long scar ran down his left cheek. He wore a simple gray uniform without decoration. Guan Park? He asked as she entered. Yes, she said carefully. Commander Minho Choi, I'll be observing your history classes. His voice was flat, professional. He showed no emotion. Can you at least tell me why? Gi-won asked. My job is to ensure everyone's well-being during these sessions, Choi said. That's all you need to know. Guan felt her face flush with embarrassment as she took her seat. Other students stared at the military man standing in the corner. She could hear whispers in languages she didn't understand. Professor Cothran entered the room. He was of Vrelnian, an amphibious species with smooth blue skin and large intelligent eyes. He had been teaching at the academy for over 300 years, according to the course description. Welcome to Galactic History, the professor said, his voice deep and melodious. This semester, we will study how different civilizations resolve conflicts. We will learn from the peaceful methods that advanced species have developed over thousands of years. The holographic display lit up, showing 2 planets connected by lines of light. Our first case study, Professor Cothran continued, is the Vexium-Plorvin territorial dispute. These 2 species discovered they both claimed the same star system. How did they resolve this? Through 200 years of careful meditation and diplomatic discussion, no violence, no threats, just patience and understanding. Gi-won listened intently, taking notes. This was exactly why she had come to the academy. To learn how peaceful species handled their problems. This demonstrates an important truth, the professor said. All truly advanced species eventually abandon violence. It is the mark of civilization. In the corner, Ji-won noticed Commander Choi's jaw tighten slightly. It was the first emotion she had seen from him, Miss Park. Professor Cothran said suddenly. You are human, yes. How would your species have handled this territorial dispute? Gi-won stood, aware that everyone was watching her. We would negotiate, she said confidently. We would find a compromise. Maybe share the system or divide it fairly. Humans believe in peaceful solutions. Several students made approving sounds. Professor Cothran nodded. Very good. It seems humans are learning to think like advanced species. Guan sat down, feeling proud. See, humans could be peaceful. They didn't need special supervision. But when she glanced at Commander Choi, she saw something in his eyes. It might have been sadness. Or maybe pity. After class, Velmara walked with Ji-won back toward their dormitory. Your answer was very thoughtful, she said. But I must ask, why do you have that military person watching you? It makes me curious about human history. I don't know why, Ji-won said, and I don't like it. We're not dangerous. Of course not, Velmara said quickly. I did not mean to suggest that. That night, Ji-won couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the war counselor policy. There had to be a reason. What did the academy know about humans that made them require this strange rule? She decided to find out. The academy library was open all night. Surely there would be information about human history there. She quietly left her room and made her way through empty corridors to the library. The building was enormous, with shelves that stretched up into darkness. Holographic indexes floated in the air, ready to help students find information. Human history, Ji-won said to the nearest index. The index flickered. Most detailed human history files require special clearance. Basic cultural information is available in Section 12. Why do they require clearance? Ji-won asked. Academy policy restricts access to potentially disturbing historical content. Disturbing? What was disturbing about human history? Gi-won found Section 12 and pulled up what files she could access. Most were about human art, music, and literature. Nothing that would explain why she needed a war counselor. She was about to give up when she heard footsteps. Dr. Nari Huang, the human diplomatic envoy, walked toward her between the shelves. Couldn't sleep, Ji-won? The older woman asked kindly. I'm trying to understand why humans need war counselors, Ji-won said. But everything is locked. Dr. Wang sighed. Some things are locked for good reasons. My advice? Focus on your studies. Don't dig into the past. But I need to know, Ji-won insisted. Dr. Wang looked at her with tired eyes. Sometimes, she said quietly, The truth is harder to carry than ignorance. Let sleeping dogs lie, Jiwon, please. Then she walked away, leaving Jiwon alone in the darkness of the library, more confused than ever. 2 weeks passed. Jiwon threw herself into her studies, trying to ignore the mystery of the war counselor policy. But every history class reminded her. Commander Choi stood in the corner, silent and watchful. Other students sometimes glanced at him nervously. Jiwon felt like she was being treated differently. She hated it. Then Professor Kothran announced the semester project. You will compare conflict resolution methods across 3 different species, he explained. One of those species must be your own. You will present your findings to the class in 4 weeks. Guan saw her chance. If she researched human conflict resolution, she could prove that humans were peaceful. She could show everyone why the war counselor policy was unnecessary. She started at the library again. But the same problem appeared. Most human historical records were restricted. She could find basic information about the United Nations and Earth's global government, but nothing detailed about how they came to exist. Frustrated, she called Junho. I can't access proper human history files, she complained. How am I supposed to do this project? Junho was quiet for a moment. My family kept records, he said finally. Military records. Unredacted, they've been passed down for generations. I can share them with you, but Jiwon, be prepared. They're not pretty. I just need facts for my project, Jiwon said. I can handle it. That night, Junho transferred the files to her tablet. Guan waited until Velmara was asleep, then began reading. The first file was about something called World War II. Guan read about millions of deaths, cities destroyed, something called the Holocaust that made her feel sick. Then she read about atomic bombs, weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Humans had built them. Humans had used them. She kept reading. There were more wars. So many wars. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, small conflicts and large ones. Humans fighting humans for resources, for territory, for ideas, for revenge. The records went back thousands of years. The weapons changed, became more efficient. But the fighting never stopped. Jiwon compared this to the other species she was studying. The Dexians had fought 3 wars in 50,000 years. The Gorviks had never fought a war at all. They didn't even have a word for murder in their language. Humans had fought hundreds of wars in just the last 1,000 years alone. By morning, Jiwon felt hollow. She looked at Velmara sleeping peacefully in the other bed. Velmara's people resolved conflicts through meditation. They believed all violence was a failure of understanding. What would Velmara think if she knew what Jiwon had just learned about humanity? The next few weeks were difficult. Jiwon worked on her presentation, trying to frame human history in the best possible light. She focused on the formation of the United Nations, the decades of relative peace after the last World War, the eventual unification of Earth under a single peaceful government. She told herself these things mattered more than the past. Humans had changed. They had grown. They were better now. Presentation day arrived. Jiwon was scheduled to go last. She sat through presentations about Dexian meditation councils, Gorvik philosophical debates, and Vrelnian cultural exchanges. Every species seemed to solve problems through patience and discussion. Finally, Professor Kothran called her name. Jiwon walked to the front of the room, aware of Commander Choi watching from his usual corner. Humans have a long history of conflict resolution, she began, her voice steady. Like all species, we went through growing pains. But we learned from our mistakes. Today, Earth is unified and peaceful. She showed images of the United Nations building, charts showing declining violence over the past 2 centuries. Statistics about Earth's current crime rates, which were very low. Professor Cothran raised a webbed hand. These are interesting modern developments. But I would like to hear about a specific historical conflict. How did humans typically resolve their differences before this peaceful era? Jiwon's throat felt tight. Well, we had various methods. Diplomacy, negotiation, treaties. Give us an example, the professor said. A specific conflict and how it was resolved. Jiwon's mind raced. She couldn't talk about the world wars. She needed something peaceful. The Cold War, she said. Two major powers had a disagreement that lasted decades, but they resolved it without direct warfare. Interesting, Professor Cothran said. How did they avoid war? Through deterrence, Juan said. Both sides built up their defenses so that war would be too costly. What kind of defenses? Giwan hesitated. Nuclear weapons, enough to destroy the entire planet several times over. The classroom went completely silent. Students stared at her. Taran, the large Gorvik student, spoke in a trembling voice. Built weapons that could kill everyone on your world. Your own species? Yes, but we never used them, Juwan said quickly. That was the point. The threat prevented war. But you built them, another student whispered. You made weapons to destroy yourselves. Velmera's crystalline face showed what might have been horror, and this was considered peaceful. Guan felt panic rising in her chest. It was better than the alternative. For that, we had actual wars that killed millions. The Cold War was an improvement. Millions. Tarn stood up, backing away from Jiwan. Your species killed millions of your own kind? Professor Cothran held up a hand. Please, let us remain calm. He looked at Jiwan with something that might have been pity. Thank you for your presentation, Miss Park. You may sit down. Giwan walked back to her seat in complete silence. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. When she sat down, students nearest to her shifted slightly away. She glanced at Commander Choi. He had stepped forward from his corner, his hand resting on something at his belt. His eyes swept the room, watching every student. Suddenly made terrible sense to everyone in the classroom. Class ended early. Students filed out quickly, whispering to each other in their various languages. Guin gathered her things slowly, not wanting to face anyone. Velmera waited by the door. When Guin approached, her roommate spoke quietly. I need some time to think, she said. Perhaps I should request a room change. The words hit Giwan like a physical blow. Velmara, please. I'm not dangerous. Humans aren't like that anymore. I know you are kind, Velmara said. But your people built weapons to destroy themselves. I do not understand such thinking. I am sorry, Juwan. I just need time. Juwan watched her only friend walk away. Over the next few days, things got worse. Students who had been friendly now avoided her in hallways. The study group she had joined quietly told her they were full. In the cafeteria, empty seats appeared around wherever she sat. JUNHO found her sitting alone one evening. I heard about your presentation, he said, sitting down across from her. Rough. I tried to make it sound better, Guan said miserably. I tried to hide the worst parts. Junho's expression hardened. That was your mistake. You tried to hide what we are. That's worse than what we did. What do you mean? Right. We're warriors, Juwan. That's what humans are. We fight. We've always fought. Pretending otherwise just makes you a liar. He stood up. Own what you are, or don't. But don't hide it and expect respect. After he left, Ji-won sat in the empty cafeteria for a long time. That night, she couldn't face returning to her room. Instead, she walked through the quiet corridors until she found herself outside Commander Choi's office. The door was open. He sat at a desk reviewing something on a screen. Come in, he said, without looking up. Ji-won entered hesitantly. Now I understand, she said quietly. Why you're here. Why they're afraid of us. Commander Choi finally looked at her. Scarred face showed no satisfaction at being right, only a tired sadness. Yes, he said simply. How do you live with it? Ji-won asked, knowing what we are. Remembering that what we were doesn't have to be what we become, Choi said. But first you have to accept the truth. You can't build a better future on lies about the past. Guan nodded slowly, tears running down her face. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she understood. The war counselors weren't there to protect humans. They were there to protect everyone else from what humans might become if they forgot what they had been. Commander Choi scheduled a mandatory counseling session with Ji-won 3 days after her disastrous presentation. Academy policy required psychological evaluations after students experienced what they called distressing historical revelations. Gi-won arrived at his office feeling numb. Sit, Choi said, gesturing to a chair. His office was bare except for a desk, 2 chairs, and a single picture frame that faced away from Juan. No decorations. No personal items. Just functional space. "How are you adjusting?" he asked. "How am I supposed to make friends when our entire history is a horror show?" Giwan's voice cracked. Valmera moved out. "Nobody sits near me. They look at me like I might explode." Choi was quiet for a moment. Then he turned the picture frame around. It showed a group of young soldiers in combat gear, smiling at the camera. "My unit," he said. "Frontier conflicts. 20 years ago. I was the only one who survived." Ak. Giwan stared at the photo. She had heard about the frontier conflicts in school, but only basic facts. First contact with hostile aliens. Quick resolution. Humanity gains concordance membership. End of story. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Choi pulled up a file on his desk screen. "This is classified, but you need to understand." He pushed a button. Holographic footage appeared in the air between them. Giwan watched as alien ships attacked a human colony. The aliens were called the Krill Collective. Large, armored beings with advanced weapons. The footage showed them overwhelming human defenses with brutal efficiency. The Krill had conquered 12 other species, Choi explained. They used conventional warfare tactics refined over thousands of years. They were good at what they did. Very good. The footage changed. Now it showed human forces responding, but they weren't fighting the way the Krill expected. Guan saw guerrilla tactics, ambushes, psychological warfare, attacks that made no conventional sense but devastated Krill morale. "We studied their tactics for 3 months, Choi said. Then we defeated them in 6 weeks. Not because we had better weapons. We didn't. We won because we fought in ways they couldn't predict." "What happened to the Krill?" Juan asked. "They surrendered. Not because they were beaten militarily. They still had more ships, more resources. They surrendered because they were terrified. They couldn't understand what humans would do next." Choi closed the file. "The Concordance intervened immediately. They offered humanity membership to prevent us from continuing the war. Why would we continue if we'd won?" "Because winning wasn't enough for some people," Choi said darkly. "Some wanted to make sure the Krill could never threaten anyone again. Ever. The Concordance saw where that was heading and stepped in." Giwan felt sick. "So they're right to fear us. They're right to be careful," Choi corrected. "Most species develop space travel, then weaponry. We did it backwards. We brought 10,000 years of military innovation to a galaxy that had mostly abandoned warfare." He pulled up another file. "This is why war counselors exist. 3 years ago, a human student named Kira studied the Belkan-Torvin border dispute. Ancient conflict going on for centuries. She wrote what she called a hypothetical solution. A military strategy that could end the war in 2 months with minimal casualties." "That sounds helpful," Juan said. It terrified the professors. Her plan was so detailed, so thorough, so efficient, that they realized a human with no formal military training could design a campaign that would make career. Generals look like amateurs. The strategy leaked. Both the Belkans and Torvins asked Earth to confirm that humans weren't planning to intervene militarily. Choi showed her 2 more examples. Both human students. Both created terrifyingly effective military solutions to galactic problems without being asked. One was only 15 years old. "When humans see a problem," Choi said, "our first instinct is to solve it. And for most of our history, solving problems meant violence. That instinct doesn't disappear just because we join a peaceful society." Guan thought about her own reaction to learning about the Vexian-Plorvin dispute. 200 years of meditation had seemed wasteful to her, inefficient. She had thought about faster solutions without even realizing it. "Will they ever trust us?" she asked. "Not in our lifetime," Choi said honestly. "Maybe our grandchildren's. Maybe never." The question isn't whether they trust us. The question is whether we can trust ourselves. "What do you mean?" "Can we look at violence as a tool and choose not to use it? Can we have the capacity for terrible things and still be good people?" That's what we're proving here. Every day. The session ended. Giwan walked back to her room, which felt empty without Velmara. She lay on her bed, thinking about everything Choi had said. The next day in history class, Professor Cawthron announced a new topic. Today we discuss the ethics of deterrence in interstellar relations, he said. The holographic display showed a star system called Orlan. The Orlan are a peaceful species, the professor explained. They have no military. They rely on concordance protection. But now they face a threat. The Maldaran Empire claims the Orlan system and has threatened invasion. What is the concordance doing? A student asked. Negotiating, Professor Cawthron said. We have been negotiating for 5 years. The Maldaran continue to prepare for invasion. Our diplomats remain hopeful for a peaceful resolution. What if negotiation fails? Another student asked. Then we will continue negotiating, the professor said. Violence is never the answer. Giwan felt something stir in her mind. She looked at the star maps, the Maldaran fleet positions, the Orlan population centers, supply routes, defensive weaknesses. She forced herself to stop thinking that way. But the thoughts came anyway, unwanted and automatic. How would other species protect the Orlan? Professor Cawthron asked the class. Students offered suggestions. Economic sanctions, cultural exchange programs, appeals to Maldaran empathy, more negotiations with better mediators. Giwan stayed silent. In her mind, she saw tactical solutions forming, quick strike capabilities, strategic resource denial, asymmetric response protocols. She was horrified at how easily the thoughts came to her. Professor Cawthron looked at her. Miss Park? Your people must have faced similar dilemmas. What would humans suggest? Giwan felt Commander Choice's eyes on her from the corner. I think, she said carefully, that humans would need more information before suggesting anything. It was a safe answer. A diplomatic answer. But in her notebook, her hand had automatically sketched a supply chain disruption plan that would cripple the Maldaran. Advance in 3 weeks. She closed the notebook quickly. Ashamed, after class, she found Junho in the common area. He was working on engineering homework, but his screen showed news feeds about the Orlan crisis. You're thinking about it too, Juan said, sitting down. Juno didn't deny it. Small strike force. Maybe 20 ships. Hit their supply depot here, pointed at his screen. Cut their fuel supply. Force them to withdraw. Orlan stays safe. Minimal casualties. Stop, Juan said. We're not supposed to think like this. But we do, Junho said. That's the problem. We see a crisis, and our brains automatically start solving it. Can't help it. That night, Jiwan couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about 12 million Orlan civilians who might die while the concordance negotiated. She thought about how easily she had seen solutions that apparently no other species considered. At 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and went to the library. She pulled up everything available on the Orlan crisis. Public information only. Nothing classified. But even with limited data, patterns emerged. Weaknesses. Opportunities. She started making notes. Just observations. Not a plan. Definitely not a plan. JUNHO found her there at dawn, surrounded by holographic displays of troop movements and supply routes. Juan, he said gently. She looked up at him, eyes red from lack of sleep. I can't stop seeing how to save them. Is this what we are? Is this all we are? Before Junho could answer, Commander Choi's voice came from behind them. Step away from the displays. Both of you now. They turned to find Choi standing in the library entrance. His expression was hard. Sir, we were just... Gyuin started. Creating tactical analyses of an active crisis. Choi finished. I know. I've been doing the same thing all night. Can't help it. It's what we do. He walked over and looked at Jiwan's notes. This is actually pretty good. The supply depot strategy would work. Then why can't we help? Jiwan asked. Because the moment we do, we prove them right, Choi said. We become the thing they fear. The species that solves every problem with violence. But what if violence is the right answer? Ji-won asked desperately. What if our way could save millions of lives? Choi met her eyes. Then we've learned nothing, and we'll spend the rest of human history being feared instead of trusted. He deleted her tactical displays with a gesture. Go get some sleep. Both of you. And remember, just because we can see a solution doesn't mean we should take it. But as Ji-won walked away, she saw Choi staring at the blank space where her analysis had been, his hand clenched into a fist. The emergency alert woke Ji-won at dawn. Her tablet screen flashed red with breaking news. The Maldoran Empire had invaded the Orlan system. Their fleet had overwhelmed the minimal orbital defenses in ours. Ground forces were landing on the Orlan homeworld. Guan rushed to the common area, where students were gathered around news displays. The footage was terrible. Maldoran soldiers moving through Orlan cities. 12 million civilians trapped on their planet. The Orlan had no weapons, no military, no way to fight back. The Concordance is convening an emergency session, a news anchor reported. Diplomatic efforts continue. Diplomatic efforts. Gigwan felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Concordance had been negotiating for 5 years. Now people were dying. Over the next few days, the Academy erupted with activity. Students organized vigils. They signed petitions. They held peaceful protests demanding the Concordance take action. But nobody suggested military intervention. The concept seemed foreign to them. Ji-won attended the vigils. She signed the petitions. But at night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept analyzing the invasion. The Maldoran supply lines stretched too thin. Their orbital coverage had gaps. Their command structure showed predictable patterns. She hated herself for seeing these things. But she couldn't stop. On the third night, she gave up on sleep entirely. She went to her desk and started making notes. Not a battle plan. Just observations. Ways the invasion was vulnerable. Hypothetical scenarios. The door opened. Gunho stood there, holding his own tablet. You too? He asked. Ji-won nodded miserably. I can't stop thinking about it. Junho sat down next to her. Look at this. Showed her his screen. It displayed a detailed tactical analysis of the Maldoran invasion. Strike points. Timing sequences. Resource calculations. A small human force could do it, he said quietly. Maybe 30 ships. 200 soldiers. We could liberate that planet in a month? We're not supposed to think like this, Juan said. But she was already studying his plans. He was right. It would work. Doesn't matter what we're supposed to think, Junho said. This is what we are. Every human on this station is probably doing the same thing right now. The lights suddenly turned on. Commander Choi stood in the doorway. Step away from your devices, he said, his voice hard. Both of you. Right now. He walked over and looked at their screens. His expression didn't change. You're confiscated. Academy regulations, he took both tablets. Sir, we were just, Junho started. Doing exactly what I've been doing, Choi interrupted. He sat down heavily. I filled 3 notebooks with tactical plans tonight. Can't help it. It's instinct. Then you understand, Juan said. We could save them. Why won't anyone listen? Because this is exactly why they fear us, Choi said. We see a humanitarian crisis, and our first instinct is warfare. It's not aid. Not negotiation. War. But people are dying, Junho argued. I know, Choi said quietly. Believe me, I know. The next morning, Giwan was surprised to find Velmara waiting outside her door. Her crystalline roommate had been avoiding her for weeks. May I speak with you? Velmara asked. They walked to a quiet garden area. Velmara was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, I have been researching human history, not the wars. What came after them? Giwan waited. After your World War II, humans created something called the Marshall Plan, Velmara continued. You spent billions helping rebuild the nations you had fought against. After Korea, you maintained peacekeeping forces for decades. After every conflict, you try to heal what you broke. She turned her crystalline face toward Giwan. Why do you do this? No other species behaves this way. Giwan had never thought about it before. I don't know. Maybe because we know what war costs. We've seen so much destruction that we can't stand to leave it unfixed. Other species avoid creating destruction in the first place, Velmara said. But humans destroy, then rebuild. Fight, then heal. You seem to need both. I do not understand, but perhaps I was wrong to fear you. I'm still the same person I was, Giwan said. Yes, Velmara agreed. That is what I am learning. You are human. That includes both the capacity for violence and the drive to repair. Both exist in you at once. She paused. I would like to move back into our room. If you will have me? Giwan felt tears forming. Yes, please. That afternoon, Elder Sithre summoned all human students to the administration building. Juan arrived to find dozens of humans gathered in a large meeting room. The tension was thick. Elder Sithre stood at the front, her insectoid features unreadable. The Concordance has received intelligence, she began. Detailed tactical analyses regarding the Orlan liberation. These plans are sophisticated, thorough, and terrifying. They came from anonymous sources within this academy. She displayed a holographic list. 17 names appeared, all human students. 17 of you, Elder Sithre continued. Independently created viable. Military solutions within 48 hours of the crisis beginning. 17. You did not collaborate. You did not consult military experts. You simply saw a problem and instinctively knew how to solve it through force. Giwan saw her name on the list. So was Junho's. So was Commander Choi's. This is why we fear you, Elder Sithre said. Not because you are evil. Not because you wish harm. But because your first instinct when facing crisis is warfare, you cannot help it. It is fundamental to your nature. The room was silent. Juan felt shame burning in her chest. I have a question for you all, Elder Sithre continued. Can you prove that humanity has truly changed? Can you show us that given the tools of violence, you will choose not to use them? A human student stood up. Our plans would work. They could save millions of lives. How is that wrong? Another student argued. We should be ashamed. We proved we haven't changed at all.
Oh.
Junho stood. Being good at something isn't evil, he said passionately. We are good at warfare. That's not a crime. The morality is in how we choose to use that skill. But we shouldn't have that skill, someone else said. Advanced species don't think this way. The argument grew heated. Humans defending their nature. Humans condemning it. All while Elder Sithre watched silently. Dr. Nari Wong stood up, quieting the room. I need to tell you something, she said. Earth's government is under enormous pressure right now. Public opinion on Earth is overwhelmingly in favor of military intervention in the Orlan crisis. Polls show 87% support for sending forces. She paused, letting that sink in. But doing so would violate Concordance law. It could start a galactic war. The Earth government is asking us, the humans in the Concordance, to show them a different way. What other way is there? Someone asked. The Concordance has been negotiating for 5 years. More negotiation won't save the Orland. Giwan's mind was racing. Negotiation hadn't worked. Military intervention was forbidden. But there had to be something. Some solution that no one had considered. Then it hit her. She thought about what Velmara had said. About humans destroying and then rebuilding. About the Marshall Plan. About peacekeeping forces. Humans didn't just know how to wage war. They knew how to end wars. They knew how to apply pressure, how to isolate aggressors, how to create conditions where violence became too costly. What if they used military strategic thinking without military force? Juan stood up, her heart pounding. Elder Sithre, what if we could create a solution that achieves the same objective as military intervention, but without violence? Would that prove we've changed? The elder's many eyes focused on her. Explain. Give us 72 hours, Guan said. We'll show you what human strategic thinking can do when it's applied to peace instead of war. Elder Sithray was silent for a long moment. Very well, she finally said. 72 hours. Show us your peaceful solution. As the meeting ended, Juan looked around at her fellow humans. Junho was grinning. Commander Choi gave her a small nod of approval. Dr. Wong looked cautiously hopeful. Ji-Wan had just made a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt like she understood what it meant to be human. Not running from what they were, using it differently. Guan gathered every human student who wanted to help. 32 of them crowded into the largest study room they could find. Commander Choi stood at the back, observing. Dr. Wang brought coffee and energy supplements. They had 72 hours. We need to think differently, Ji-Wan announced to the group. We know how to win wars. Now we need to figure out how to win peace. Junho pulled up the Maldoran invasion data. What's their real objective? Why do they want the Orlan system? Resources, someone said. The Orlan system has rare minerals, so make those resources worthless to them, another student suggested. They worked through the night. Guan organized them into teams. One group analyzed Maldoran economics. Another studied their political structure. A third examined their military supply chains. They approached it like a military operation, but the objective wasn't destruction. It was pressured by morning. A picture emerged. The Maldoran Empire was economically dependent on trade with 17 other systems. Their government was a council of industrial leaders. They had invested heavily in the invasion. But their economy was fragile. Coordinated economic sanctions, Ji-Wan said. If those 17 trading partners all cut ties at once, the Maldoran economy collapses. The Concordance has tried sanctions before, Dr. Wang pointed out. They haven't worked. Because they were gradual, Junho said, studying the data. One at a time. The Maldoran adapted. But if everyone cuts trade simultaneously, they have no time to adjust. We need more than economics, Juan said. We need to hit them from multiple directions. Another team presented their findings. The Maldoran occupation was brutal, and they weren't hiding it. Propaganda campaign, a student suggested. Show the galaxy what they're doing. Make them toxic to work with. And refugee evacuation, someone else added. We can't stop the occupation immediately, but we can save lives while we pressure them to withdraw. The plan grew more complex. Economic sanctions. Propaganda highlighting Maldoran war crimes. Refugee evacuation routes. Covert supply lines to Orlan resistance groups. Nothing required violence. But all of it required the kind of strategic coordination that humans were naturally good at. On the third day, they had a comprehensive plan. It used game theory from human diplomatic history, conflict resolution models from Earth's own wars, psychological pressure tactics. Everything humans had learned from thousands of years of fighting applied to peace. Commander Choi reviewed their work. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, this might actually work. It achieves the same objectives as military intervention without firing a shot. Will they listen to us? Ji-Wan asked. Only one way to find out, Choi replied. Elder Sithray arranged for Gi-Wan to present to the Concordance Council. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from all 47 member species. Gi-Wan stood at the center, feeling very small and very human. Honored council members, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. We present a comprehensive non-military solution to the Orlan crisis. She walked them through each element. Coordinated economic sanctions from all 17 Maldoran trading partners, implemented simultaneously. A galaxy-wide media campaign documenting Maldoran occupation atrocities. Refugee evacuation protocols. Covert humanitarian supply lines. Political isolation of Maldoran leadership. Most importantly, Ji-Wan continued, we've created a timeline. This plan achieves liberation of the Orlan system in approximately 6 months. The same objective as military intervention, but without casualties. A Vrelnian counselor spoke. This plan is remarkably detailed. almost militarily precise. How can we trust that humans won't use this same strategic thinking for warfare in the future? Giwan took a breath. You can't, she said honestly. Humans excel at strategic thinking because we had to. We fought for survival for thousands of years. That ability doesn't disappear. But we're asking you to let us prove that the same skills that make us dangerous can make us valuable peacemakers. We can't change what we were, Giwan continued. Our history is full of violence. That's true. But we can choose what we become. This plan proves we can use our nature for peace instead of war. Professor Cothran stood from his seat in the observer section. I have taught this student, he said. I have seen her struggle with human nature. What she presents here is remarkable. Not because it denies what humans are, but because it redirects it. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Finally, they voted. The plan was approved. Implementation began immediately. The 17 trading partners, convinced by the detailed economic analysis, cut all ties with the Maldoran Empire on the same day. The propaganda campaign launched across the galaxy. Refugee ships began evacuating Orlan civilians. The Maldoran leadership was shocked. They had expected negotiation. They had prepared for possible military intervention. They hadn't expected coordinated non-military pressure on this scale. Over the next 6 months, Guan watched the plan unfold. It wasn't perfect. There were complications and adjustments. But slowly, it worked. The Maldoran economy began failing. Their political coalition fractured. The cost of occupation became unsustainable. They withdrew from the Orlan system. Not because they were defeated militarily. Because continuing was economically and politically impossible, the Orlan were free. Not a single shot had been fired by Concordance forces. Giwan became somewhat famous after that. News services across the galaxy covered the story of the human student who used strategic thinking for peace. But she was uncomfortable with the attention. What mattered more was when Velmara hugged her. Crystalline arms, awkward but genuine. You proved something important, Velmara said. Being capable of violence and choosing peace is more meaningful than never being capable of violence at all. Professor Cothran added a new section to his curriculum. Human Strategic Peace Studies. It wasn't required, but students from other species began attending voluntarily. They wanted to understand how humans thought about problems. Elder Sithrek called another assembly of human students. The War Counselor policy will continue, she announced. Guan felt disappointment, but the Elder wasn't finished. However, the role is changing. War Counselors will no longer be there for containment. They will be there for guidance. To help you channel your strategic nature constructively. Commander Choi found Juan after the announcement. You did well, he said simply. We'll always need supervision, though, Guan said. They'll always be careful around us, as Choi agreed. And that's not necessarily bad. Being dangerous isn't the same as being evil. It just means we need to be thoughtful about our choices. 1 year later, Guan graduated with honors in xenobiology. She received multiple job offers. She accepted a position with the Concordance's newly created Strategic Peace Division, a human-led initiative that applied strategic thinking to conflict resolution across the galaxy. Velmara joined her team. Combining Vexian meditation techniques with human strategic analysis, Junho signed on as well, bringing his engineering expertise to humanitarian logistics. The Academy still required war counselors for human history students. But something had changed. Now students from other species voluntarily attended those classes. They wanted to understand human history, not just the wars, but what came after. The rebuilding. The peace. On her last day at the Academy, Guan stood in the same garden where she had first talked with Velmara about human nature. She thought about everything she had learned. About what it meant to be human in a galaxy that feared violence. Humans were warriors. That was true. They had fought for their entire history. They saw problems and instinctively thought about solutions involving force. That instinct would probably never disappear completely. But humans were also builders, healers, people who couldn't stand to leave destruction unfixed. That was part of their nature too. The galaxy had feared humanity because they mastered warfare. Now, slowly, They were learning to respect humanity for choosing to master peace instead. It wasn't complete trust. Maybe it would never be, but it was a beginning. Commander Choi's words echoed in Jiwon's mind. The question wasn't whether humans were violent. It was whether they could choose not to be. Every day, humans at the Academy made that choice. Every day, they looked at their history and decided to be better. Every day they proved that understanding your nature wasn't the same as being controlled by it. Jiwon smiled, looking up at the stars through the garden's transparent dome. Humanity would always be dangerous. That couldn't change. But dangerous didn't have to mean destructive. It could mean capable. It could mean effective. And if humans chose to use that capability for building instead of destroying, then maybe, eventually, the galaxy would see them not as a threat to fear, but as allies to trust. That was worth working toward. That was worth everything. And it all started with understanding why no alien academy permitted humans in history. Class without a supervised war counselor. Because remembering what you were capable of was the first step to choosing what you would become.